Kia ora, talofa, hi, and welcome to Tanarumanga's Team Talk. Proudly sponsored by Victual, New Zealand's first health and wellbeing supplement that combines Māori and Pacifica wisdom and ingredients. And it's a true honour and a privilege to have on the show today Jonny Wilkinson. Hey Jonny, good to have you on.
Yeah, pleasure. Good to be here.
And I'm going to, as I've done with previous guests, I'm going to embarrass you a bit with, your career stats and things that you've done in the past. But we'll start off with, you're a proud ex-Newcastle Falcon and Toulon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're the youngest player to debut for England when you debuted in 98 at 18. Going to play over 90 tests. In 2003, you won a Grand Slam and a World Cup, which we know with that famous drop kick in extra time. I'm sure you've talked that out to death. And you've played 6 tests for the British and Irish Lions. Then you finished your career in Toulon, where we came across each other, and winning 2 Heineken Cups after I left, and the top 4 and the top 14 final. And you were inducted into the World Rugby Hall of Fame in 2016. And as I said, that we talk about the past because that's where it starts, and we will talk a little bit more about that. But we also want to know what's happening now, because it's been such a long time since we've caught up. And I'm very fortunate that you've made time for me while you're on holiday.
Yeah. I'm having a little time abroad, which is lovely. But this is what we're talking about now, I guess, or what I'm going to try and bring into some of this is my passion. So whenever I can find time to inject that, or find an opportunity to just live my passion, I'll do that. So talking about these things, and for me, it's all about understanding potential. You just mentioned all the past, and it's just being here now and recognizing how can I connect to the deepest, most immense me right now. And all that stuff you've mentioned is all kind of opportunities to learn a bit more, to understand it a bit more, so that each moment becomes more of a possibility. And there's no coincidence that we're doing this right now. Like you said, we crossed paths a while back. We were adversaries at one point, then on the same side, then you were coaching me and we spoke, we had chats that transcended that coach-player boundary as well into very much support network, hugely in friendship-wise. And it's no coincidence to me that we're crossing again now to talk about stuff that you're passionate about and I'm passionate about. It's kind of like, to me, it makes a huge amount of sense. And now it's a case of making the most of it.
Yeah, well, that's right. We have the platforms to do that now with the help of obviously technology, which still seems to elude us a bit. But I think the past kind of defines us and our ability to influence others. And, as you're talking around, it's huge about achieving that potential, that's and something that, like you're saying, you're passionate about. And I think as a coach, and we want the people that we are around and influencing to reach that potential, and which is sometimes harder than it is to say.
Yeah, for me, this is a conversation I could destroy your computer battery with. Believe me, I could, because for me, there's nothing else in life than potential. It's so big, and yet it's still put as a side issue, almost as like you've got to get on with life and try and do this. But to understand that your very experience of life is a marker for your internal state, and your internal state is where your potential is. The thing that I find most bizarre, when I say bizarre, I mean I was part of this, is that for so long in life you go around allowing everything around you to affect the way you are on the inside, and the way you are on the inside is what inspires that performance or that experience of life. And so you're giving away that power to other people, which is another way of saying that other people and things around me hold my potential, which is, it's ridiculous. So for me to sort of come to terms is to be like, right, my potential is in me, so stop looking elsewhere for it. Secondly, my potential is what's possible for me. And if I already know what that is, then it's not my potential, it's my limit. So I've got to give up all these ideas about what my best is, because it's not my best. So I've got to open up to the unknown. I've got to open up to excitement and just impulse and inspiration and insight, and just allow it to come in the moment, instead of being, as I was for so long, hooked into preparation and control, trying to control everything in the future, instead of realizing that potential is in the unknown. If you try and believe away the unknown or guarantee away the unknown, you're just getting rid of your potential. Because you know as well as me, I think I can say this, on the field, for example, the only time you do something that you're kind of like, how the hell did I do that, is when it's unplanned. You put yourself in a space where you don't know what's coming. And then it's when you do something ridiculous that you can't believe you can do. And yet we all, before the game, go on about trying to control everything. But it's in those moments that you actually find it. And so you mentioned as a coach, I coach sort of guys now in skills. And the first thing I let myself understand is I have no idea what their best is. So each day I don't have anything to compare them to in terms of what's right and wrong. Each day you start fresh, but those sort of like connection you have with them allows you to sort of just have a bit more of an understanding or a knowing in the moment about what to say and what's right. It's an energetic thing, whereas for so long I've mixed up the learning about rugby from my past. I've mixed it up with the learning about me, because the two aren't the same. Learning about me means shedding everything, getting rid of old ideas, getting rid of things that I thought were right and wrong. It means getting rid of that. Learning about rugby is about looking at what's working, what's not, what's this, what's that, and yeah, sure, but to lose yourself in that is sometimes where this sort of difficult space comes with end of career or injury, is that you mix yourself up with your rugby, and then your rugby goes and you go with it. And the learning journey for me about myself is every time I've had an issue, a challenge, or the answer has never been to gather some more information about it. It's actually to let go of something. And constantly letting go is what brings you closer to your potential, to the unknown. And so I've had a very big switch in my journey whereby I was a gatherer. I would look at video of this, video of that, and I'd look at my old performance and go, yeah, bring it on. This is who I am. And then it all goes. So you get injured for 3 years and you go, oh my God. And then you realize also that the more controlled you get, the less of a player. We had chats about this at Toulon. Yeah, you mentioned I played for England at 18. I did things that when I was 18 that I'm kind of was like surprising myself daily. When I was 26 and I thought I knew everything, I was surprising myself rarely. And you look at it and go, what's happened? The same way you kind of, when you're 5 years old, you have this beaming smile, and yet when you're 35, you go around talking about stress and expectation and all these things. And so I sort of realized I've got to look at, I keep thinking I'm preparing, but if I'm preparing, I'm preparing the wrong thing, because I'm getting worse. I might be winning more, but I'm getting less inspired. I'm feeling less alive. I'm getting less healthy, as you mentioned, health and well-being. I feel less connected to others. I feel less just vibrant, energized, inspired, and whatever it be. So that's been a big switch for me, hugely. And like I said, when it comes to potential, when you move towards potential, you move towards your true self. When you move towards that, you move towards the now. And it's all about, it's not something you're going to read in a book or find out about, or it's something you've got to do for yourself. And we're all doing it in our own ways, and it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, look, geez, listening to you there, our time in Toulon, because that was, as you said, after your injuries stint, and refinding yourself when you came over, because look, I'll be honest, when you came over, you'd been injured for a bit, and we were looking for a 10, and your name came up, and obviously Murad saw the potential to market Jonny Wilkinson. There's a different kind of potential there. From a playing perspective, obviously you couldn't state what you've done in the past, and yet your history of injury, obviously was preceding you. So when you came over, we'd heard about your perfectionist tendencies, And we saw it, and there was I know there was a big push from our coach at the time, I had to, talk to you around not overtraining, not,
I remember this chat.
yeah. And I just, look, that's the chat that stays with me. And, it's, again, it's your preparation. That's what you did to get yourself ready to do what you do well. And when I said, hey, look, we've been told, like, make sure you watch, do you have to go, 2 hours before our game to go and kick? And you said to me, he says, Tana, it used to be 4 hours. So they should just be happy. They should just be happy. Yeah. They should just be happy that I'm focused on doing what I do. So I have pulled it back. But if I don't do it, then I don't feel comfortable and confident going into the game. And that was the last time we had that chat, because I thought, yeah, shucks, we've made improvement. You've seen yourself and you've made the adjustment to your body, and obviously, you did what you did when you're over there, and I saw, but I also saw that how happy you were. You won't find a more humble person than yourself when with all the accolades that you do have. And our chat, and we just had a really good, easy to chat, kind of a relationship. So when we talk around, like you're saying, your past and your preparation, the learnings again, as you've gone through the stages of your life here. So what did you learn through that time around Toulon? Because it was like the second coming of Jonny Wilkinson, if I can say that.
Yeah, it was, and it teaches you a really interesting thing, because sometimes you can get somewhere accidentally, and because you don't own it, it leaves you again. But often it happens accidentally because things line up for you. And what happened with Toulon was I'd constructed myself into a certain way, and the beliefs I had at that time linked up with the idea that I was injured, and so I was kind of like, they've forgotten about me. Everyone's forgotten about me, so I had my back to the wall, that kind of thing, and that worked. Then I decided I wasn't going to go to a club in England because I didn't want to play against Newcastle, which we ended up playing against about a year later anyway. But I said I want to go to somewhere abroad. I want to get out of the English league. I didn't want to play against my old club, and so I went to France, found Toulon, and when I got to Toulon, it's sunny, hot, it's by the beach, people are speaking a different language. So according to the way I'd constructed myself and being British, I was on holiday. So when I rocked up, I'm on holiday. And my whole being starts to try to do this thing to be like, I'm on holiday, so I'm chilling out. But at the same time, I'm also trying to play. And it brought together an interesting mix of kind of being able to give everything, and for a short while having that holiday relaxation around it, which brought about this kind of a bit more of the flow and easiness and receptivity around just the performance. But sure enough, fast forward 6 months, things are going quite well. People start turning up with banners with your name on, and then the old cycle kicks back in. Because you're not conscious of how you transcended it, you don't transcend it, and as a result, it started to kick in. I started to look to be like, yeah, this isn't a joke anymore. These people are here for me, and I can't let them down. I can't do this, and suddenly you're back into the same thing. But when you mentioned the whole kicking before games or kicking during the week or thinking about things so much, I coach guys now, and often we'll just do, in 2 minutes, you can get someone to do things you're kind of like, they never knew they could do. And you say, wow, we did that in 2 minutes. You've got a week. Imagine what you could do with that. And when they come back before the game, you're like, you're a mess. What have you been doing with your time? And for me, it was kind of that, is that 50%, or not even, well, at the beginning, it was probably 50% of all that kick in, of all the skills work, was pure passion. I didn't give it. I couldn't care less if I was playing that weekend or was never playing again. I just had a ball in my hand. You play touch rugby with me, I'd have played for 10 hours, and I'd have still said, I'll be there for tomorrow, because I just feel so incredible. The other 50% was pure fear, which I grew up with. I grew up with a sense of impending doom, and I built defense mechanisms around how to stave it off and how to be perfectionist that might save me from it, or whatever it was. And as you grow up, that kind of matures into a more subtle, difficult thing to understand. And most of the time I was kicking out there, I kick with guys now, and they need per session 30 to 40 minutes. when you go over that, you have to question, why are you doing it? I was doing 2 or 3 hours a day, and pretty much all of it was to do with trying to soothe my insecurity. So when you mentioned, I need to do it, I didn't need to do it. I just wasn't in a place where I could see that at that time. And as a result, it was pure compulsion, people said it was dedication and devotion. I'm sort of going, it's not, because I'm either loving it or I have to do it. There's no me sitting there thinking, shall I go and do it today? It's me going, I either have to do it today or I'm already doing it anyway, because I just love it more than life. And my whole journey was about trying to take away the compulsion and add it to the beauty of passion. But the other thing happened. Most of it went into compulsion. And by the end of Toulon, I was kind of dangerously getting close to being back in the same space I was in. Just because you have to release it yourself. People can't do it for you. And as much as you can have a chat with someone and you go, oh, I love that. And you feel great for 2 days, or you go to Toulon, you feel great for 6 months. You have to do it yourself, and you have to transcend it consciously.
Yeah, I think that the art of doing, we can all read and be told, and in the end, sometimes the learning through the actions of actually putting those things in place, which again is the hard step, because you're stepping out of that comfort zone again that we talk about. You're talking around your coaching. So how has that helped in terms of, from your personal journey, and then when you're teaching kids and you're talking now you need 30 minutes when you've been through a stage where, like I've been through the 4-hour, boys, like I've done this every day for 4 hours. You don't have to do that. Trust me, this is how we go. And, and creating those relationships so that, again, we go back to your passion around how they achieve their potential. So how do you go about, putting what across to those young men and women?
The thing that makes it in a way so interesting is that, and I don't want to go too far into this because it does get quite sort of like, for me it's really interesting, but to keep it sort of like on a level I think is pretty reasonable to understand, is that you just have to let go of the backstory you have for someone else. And whatever you see them do, whatever someone says, whatever someone appears like, or whatever someone does, it never ever interferes with that connection you have with them, which is, we are just two energy forms serving each other. So there is no coach-player relationship, because otherwise there's already a dynamic there, which is a limitation. You simply understand that when you remove the limitation of gender, as you just mentioned, age, of where someone's come from, obviously all the racial ones, any of that business, you remove it all to realize that you're both exactly the same, but you're in terms of like your worth, but at the same time you're uniquely sort of equipped. And therefore, when you cross paths with someone, it's not by coincidence. There's a serving taking place both mutually, and you've got to open to that, otherwise you miss it. Because it's never ever about you doing something for someone else. It's never ever you working on someone else. And when you try and work on someone else, it just doesn't work for anyone. And when you start to realize that this is about me becoming more of me, it always serves the other person. And therefore, it's kind of like when you turn up, I don't turn up with ideas about where someone should be, what they should be doing, how they should be feeling, what's right, wrong. You turn up and you trust in all your ability to sense and to know what's needed by being empty when you turn up. And it's the complete opposite of all the other lessons. But when you get to a stage of that kind of trust and confidence, it becomes so relevant what you do, because you respond to that person then and there. You don't respond to the person you saw 2 weeks ago do something. You respond to how that person is. And when you meet that person as they are, you then meet them in the now, and that's where you can gain. If you start where they were, you miss where they are now. Like you're driving the bus on a different route, you're never going to pick them up. You've got to start where they are. And what that means is you've got to start where you are. You've got to lose your own backstory. You've got to be able to bring yourself back from, if you're feeling a bit angry, resistant, fearful, all of that is getting in the way of this connection. So that's what I mean. You do your own work and you turn up and things start to make sense. The same way in a game, everyone says, oh, when the whistle goes, I felt great. But beforehand, I felt a mess. It's like, but it's not because the changing room's a mess. It's because you've got all that fear and rubbish in your mind. That means you can't see clearly, you can't feel clearly. And when the whistle goes, you drop it. You just drop it all. And then everyone goes, oh, it makes sense on the field. It's like, but it can also make sense everywhere and all the time. And I was the worst for that. I kind of had 6 days of suffering so I could enjoy 1 day a week. And then when I decided, oh, wow, this is working for me, all this suffering, I added another half day of suffering, thinking I'll get more out of that half day. And by the end of it, I had 7 days of suffering and nothing else. And it does, by suffering, you don't create joy. You just create more cycles of suffering. And so the way you create joy is to be joyful. The only time you can be joyful is right now. So that's the work for me as a coach. I turn up and make sure that I am open, receptive, compassionately sort of loving the moment and the person I'm with. And then you go, oh, let's see what happens now.
It's like you got so used to being, you know, the negative moments, you know, all those days of, you know, uncomfortable and, oh, yeah, this is what I'm used to. You just become used to it, don't you? And when you don't have it.
Mate, you mentioned it before about comfort zone. Funny thing about comfort zone, it isn't comfortable. Most people's comfort zone is being stressed and angry, but it's familiar. And you kind of go, right, well, I don't like not having it. I'd prefer to feel terrible because at least I feel kind of familiar with the terrible feeling. Because actually sometimes if you just say to someone, what would really make an incredible difference is if you just enjoy every moment of your life. You think that would be like freedom, but people can't enjoy every moment of their life. And because everyone's more comfortable being against something. Yeah, because at least you know who you are when you're up against someone else, or you don't like this, or you do like that, or you can't handle it, or you wish that, you know, all those kind of things. And for me, that's been my story, you know, just I always had to have something I was up against. And that's why I was terrible when people applauded me. The more that Toulon fans applauded me, the worse I got. I couldn't handle it. I needed them to be telling me I was rubbish and all this because, you know, I didn't function well, feeling like it was all going well for me. It just felt like something was about to come up and trip me up really badly.
Well, that's also the measure of yourself too, that fight, you know, that, you know, fight or flight kind of attitude as well. And you see something interesting because it's something that I've found too, you know, when you've got to forget the backstory. And I know that's for us, for myself, I think that's easy for me to say because again, but people see us and perceive us, you know, young players. You're Jonny Wilkinson, Hall of Famer, and, you know, you've done this. So they're not as obviously open to coming on, oh, hey, you know, can you help me with this? Or just having a conversation or they don't want to look like they don't know, you know, and show you their, you know, their bad habits or, you know, everything has to be perfect because they're on show for such a, you know, a legend of the game. How were you able to break that down for them? You know, because that's obviously what I've found is that you have to actually show some vulnerability. You have to show that I'm not perfect. What I did was, you know, what I did, but that doesn't define who I am, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe starting with creating an environment of vulnerability by going there first is a leadership in itself, and that does it. But it's very much your own energy, because all of these things are image based. So when someone's not with you, you can sort of say, oh, they're responding to the image they have of me. But when they're with you and talking with you, suddenly if you're into your image, that'll carry on during the conversation. If you've let that go and your energy is true to itself, you'll transform it in every way. It only ever comes down to you, you know, I think, or to the person, and that's, to me in my situation. And what that means is, as you said about the application, you've got to go there yourself, because your energy speaks everything, not your words, not even your actions. Your energy does. People can behave a certain way that's so kind, and yet it really winds you up, because you sense that there's a kind of conflict there going on, and it's almost like a passive aggressive thing, whatever it might be, because you sense that distance. And when people speak a certain way, and you sense that it's not connected, it's not coherent with everything else that's happening, and you've got to get to the source. And when the question comes down to it, do you really care about anything you've really done? Could someone take it all away from you, and would you be happy to say, yeah, take it? Or are you just saying that because if it came to it, you'd be like, take it, but leave me those bits, please, leave me that. Don't you dare take that. Or please take that bit, please take that bit, or whatever it be. But you just can't cheat it. And that's why it just gets more and more powerful, because you realize that you're speaking to these people, and not just you're speaking to these people, but you're bringing them to you. You're creating these environments, and you're creating the situations. You're bringing these coincidences into your life because you're asking for it. And when you start to clear up the inside, you start to be more and more able to communicate what you're asking for. The message becomes really clear what you're asking for in your life, and you start to see it happening. When you've got all these mixed messages of, I really want this, but I'm not worthy, you're also saying, I want this, but I don't want it. And so what you get is stuff that keeps confusing you. Whereas if you just go to that space, you realize that, like I said before, everything is serving you. And when you see a person there, for me, as I see them, I'm kind of just like, you're just everything. You're in my space, and now you're everything to me. You can't cheat that. And when you don't, that person will give up all your image, because it just feels, we were both there with Joe Van Nieck at Toulon, someone that kind of had, that kind of, often had that energy about himself. And as a result, you'd find yourself just hanging around with him. It had nothing to do with whether he was captain, if he played for South Africa, and if he'd done this, and whether he was viewed as the best this or the best that, or whether he was Toulon's, golden child. You just hung around with him. Why? Because you just felt like you could be more of you when you were around him. And it's things like that which will always sort of like stick with me.
Yes, no, Joe Van Nieck, it's a great man, and he's doing well for himself in South America, I see, and he followed his path over there.
Yeah. I've actually been in contact with him just recently, and he's such an interesting transformation you've seen happening in sort of someone's life there, and I'd love to know about his experience. But
no, he's definitely one that I'm gonna have to get in touch with. I'm gonna take you back to your
it's up for your podcast. Yeah.
I'm going to take you back to your Newcastle days when you were younger, and I know we've talked about your time with Inga Tuingamala and Pat Lam when they were there at and how they looked after you, because you speak so fondly of them, and your early days there with them. Can you let us in on that little story too, please?
Mate, can I just kick out of this internet? I'll just come straight back on. Is that all right? If you stay there?
Sure. No worries. Yeah.
Because I'm losing connection. Hold on, one sec.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you. You keep pausing. You keep your video, and I think I must be just getting delayed. You're good?
I'm back in. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Your image just pauses there now and then. So
yeah, perfect. I think that should be a bit better.
Yeah, I'll just can you
rephrase?
Yeah, we'll go back to your time with the Newcastle Falcons when you're a young man, and talk about Inga Tuingamala and Pat Lam and your fondness of your relationship with them when you first started out, and how they helped you growing up.
Yeah, definitely. Two things that really hit home straight away. One being that I was young in a brand new space. They were like I was going to say like gods, but a better word is like gladiators, because I watched them from the sidelines. You know, like I was an 18-year-old often on the bench, standing on the sideline around the first few sessions of training. And when they walked on the field, there was a presence about them both. You see Pat Lam stood at the back of a line out. The way he stood, you just felt like you could see it was like gladiatorial. Do you know what I mean? Like, because imagine him entering the Colosseum, you know, like just off the way, the what he gave off. And Inge, I mean, the other thing that helped with Inge was I've just not seen, at that age, I had not seen anything like that happen on a rugby field, whether it was defensively, attacking wise. He was opening doors for me daily in terms of possibilities. Yeah, as an inspirational figure, he was incredible. Pat, the same. And what also made a difference, so when I saw these guys, the gladiators, they also welcomed me so humbly, with such just such kind of respect. I was one of the opinion, you've got to earn your respect, but they gave me the human respect immediately. The rugby respect, you know, they gave me that for being there, but they obviously I had to show, yeah, that from a Newcastle level that I was there. And so that was beautiful to have that kind of acceptance, if you like, from people that I saw as being worthy of being worshipped. And that the other part that's really interesting was just the joy that they played with. I saw very little of that stress and suffering pre-game from them. And it was phenomenal to see that versus what was a much more kind of, I guess, westernized, if you like, European, I don't know what you want to call it, but view of it, where there was a lot of kind of ticking boxes and we must do this and these are the right words to say. But yeah, for Pat and Inge, they were in the corner having their own fun, you know, and when they went on the field, they just carried on having their own fun, largely, depending on the game, either following or not following the game plan, but doing stuff that just turned the game anyway. But when you saw them link up, there was a lot of kind of connections via eye contact, even making silly noises to each other on the game, whatever they were, just that were basically secret messages to each other, because they were seeing things a bit like a Zidane in football or a Federer in tennis. They're operating at a level that the two of them are on the level, and I'm not sure other people are not on better or worse levels, but other people are on different levels. So they had their own language for that level. And when some of the stuff, yeah, that they did, it, for me, it just made me it got me, at that age, it kept my passion burning for rugby. As I got older, it kept bringing me under challenge, just to be like, look, yeah, what are you doing this for? Look at these guys. They're still getting better. I mean, Lammy kept winning Player of the Year awards. Yeah, the older he got, the more of them he won. And Inge kept, you know, doing the same thing. So, you know, fair play. I couldn't have walked into a better setup with those guys, and yeah, and a few others in there as well that really made the difference.
So you're still involved in a little bit of rugby, like you said, in terms of coaching and commentary as well. And obviously, you know, you've been in the game a long time. You know, what are the changes you're seeing in the modern game? You know, from you know when you played.
Hold on one second, mate. Can you, are you okay to edit this bit? Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to shut the door. Hold on one second. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I find it really interesting, because I feel like rugby just goes in cycles a little bit, where you kind of, it's really open and it's really entertaining, and then it kind of creeps in around the laws, where people just start looking for that 1%er. People get a little bit closer to the offside line. People hold on to the ball on the floor a little bit longer. People kick the ball a bit more because it works that way. And depending on where the referees go with it. And then what they do is kind of like put in some more laws to open it back up or to release that. And for a couple of years, but like we were talking about with my cycles, you get that response where it's all like, but then it creeps back in, just because the competitive nature of everyone is to challenge that space. But also, as you mentioned, when you get more used to things, you just start to pinch an extra yard here or there, and you don't become so vigilant on it. And I think, however, I think that's the way it's always going to be, because it's so much about winning with promotion, relegation, and championships on the line. People are going to play it that way, but I guess the real talent is where people can play on the edge and still open up to those moments of inspiration, which is, as the game gets quicker, people, like the Inga and Pat, those guys can see things on that level. They can still do what needs doing when the defenses are sprinting up, as they are now so much more, and the game's so much more kind of intense. They can still find answers on the hoof. Yeah, but it's a funny one. It's almost like it's kind of the same as it always has been, but just faster and more physical. But with all the stuff around the the concussion and the injuries and what have you, there's some really important moments coming up in the sort of the journey of rugby, and they have to be addressed, because it's come to I guess almost a fork in the road now, where they have to make big decisions, and I think they're making the right ones and looking at them from the right way.
Yeah, I agree. Like as you said, in terms of the game, we have to look at it a little bit differently now. Safety and is a lot more paramount, because it is faster. It is, the players are not only stronger and bigger now. They have to think light on their feet, all of them, and especially the tens. What I've noticed, Jonny, they haven't gotten bigger yet. They're having a lot more people run down their channels, which was a strength of yours. I think I remember trying to move you out of 10 spot once, just to, hey, look, we'll look after you. No 10 wants to move from inside that channel. So, like with the modern teams now, what do you think is probably the fundamental, the skill sets that they must have, and who are the ones that the teams that you think are really changing the game at the moment?
I think the thing about all of rugby is how it relates to what we've been speaking about, comfort zones and what have you, is that with any rugby player, regardless of position, you can't just sit in your space. You can't just sort of say, this is what I do, because one, you probably won't stay in that space for very long, because someone else will take it from you. And two, that's where all growth is. Because if you've decided this is where I'm going to stay, you're going to start talking about 1% gains over years. Whereas if you start to broaden into other spaces, you just provide, whether it be props and footwork. We've seen some of that from some of the Irish boys recently, or whatever. You see props and footwork, props and offloads, second rows and offloads, second rows and being able to throw long flat passes at speed, and or to second rows, and especially back rows, we've known that for a long time, but second rows being able to hang out in the wide channels and make good decisions and make, and then from New Zealand's angle, we've seen hookers putting through, brilliant little kicks that make beautiful sense, that a 10 hasn't even seen himself and is kicking himself going, oh my God, why am I not seeing that? But all of these things just involve a degree of ambition, which means, again, as coming back to what I said before, about shedding those constraints around, this is a hooker, this is what a hooker must do. And there's a lot of constraints around the 10. And what it ends up doing is dangerously is that 10 starts off with that free-flowing kind of like wow factor, and inevitably make a few sort of like calls that may have been sort of better elsewhere, especially around tactical sides. What happened to me, when I was young in that Newcastle time you mentioned, 18, 19, I didn't kick the ball at all. Every bit of sort of criticism I got was, you've got to start kicking the ball. You've got to start understanding territory and how to relieve sort of pressure and when to kick on the front foot, on the back foot, all this kind of stuff. As well as, and you've got to learn how to boss your players around and all these things. And the danger is that wow factor side, as with success and winning, starts to just sort of say, all right, that wasn't getting me any of the wins, because it's the icing on the cake. It's not the cake. It's not the win. It's the win by how much. And you get into those, winning's everything. And by the end of it, you become robotic. And so as you get older, and this works with even just doing more and more kicking practice and those kind of things, you get stiffer. And as you get older and stiffer, you just become less of a threat. And as you become less of a threat, you become just less sort of a concern for the defense. So they start to load up on all your options. And as you start doing that, you start complaining that there's no space, when actually you're kind of, it's on you. The thing a 10 needs to do for me is challenge those boundaries and find more and more wow factor, and be searching for the wow factor. As you mentioned, the comfort zone, being like, and just be, because most 10s I know are phenomenal touch rugby players when they're young. They got everything, because they're seeing the game on a tactical level, they're reading other people's lines, they're seeing all that, but they can run it in themselves. And as you start to learn this idea that somehow you've got to tell everyone else what to do and you've got to direct the whole team, you shelve all that kind of beating people one-on-one. You look at how many people nowadays, as a number 10, would just go straight onto the ball and take someone on one-on-one. Normally it involves give it, and then all of a sudden, oh wait, I'll go through a gap that's opened up for me. But what about just having the foot? And Bowen Barrett was kind of bringing it to the fore a little bit, with being able to, with his pace and what have you. But then when the questions come over about other things, which okay, it might be you miss a few kicks, but for those things, you're kind of like, yeah, but just let the guy be the guy. Let him do what he does, because someone else can kick a ball, or he can work out the kick and he'll get that. You'll learn how to kick. But what you won't find, you'll find it much harder to learn how to have a defense, basically bricking themselves, because they have no idea what you're going to do next. I think for me, that's the wow factor now. You see a lot of the young players are challenging in that line. We've got a guy in England called Marcus Smith who's doing a lot of that. Someone I work with. George Ford is someone that I've worked with a lot, as with, who they have a deft ability. And what you want to keep doing is, with all the chat about game plan, you just want to keep saying, look, just yes to that, but also no to that. Because at the end of the day, when you finish your career, you're going to look back and go, right, yeah, it was great pulling strings, but the bit I wanted to do was be in the action. And I think you've got to get that balance, because when a number 10 is in the action, you'll pull the strings anyway. You find that just comes, you've seen that with loads and loads of people around the place, and just that when they're playing well, they start to make good decisions. When they have a go and they make an early break, or they make a couple of good hits early on, the next thing they do follows that momentum. Whereas I think sometimes I'd find myself 10 minutes into a game and I'd still be clean. I'd be thinking, and as I got more and more into the game, I'd be like, I'd almost feel like just diving on the floor, just to feel like, look, I'm in the game. Because then you start to make decisions based on, what you've been thinking before the game. They're not to do with what you're feeling. You've got to get the feel of the game, and that's what 10s have got to do. They've got to stay in the game, which means get dirty, get hit. I remember sort of trying to tackle a few guys, whether it be Dan Carter or these guys, and you put a really good shot on them, and afterwards you'd be like getting up, and you'd see them just get up and be like, yeah, great hit. You're like, oh no, I think I've just got them in the game. I've just got them in the game. You're better off just trying to leave them out the game. But there's guys changing that because they're in the action the whole time. As with me with pre-World Cup, Clive Woodward was constantly telling me, you've got to stay out because we need you to pull the strings. You've got to balance that. Because what I ended up doing was finding out that through certain elements of kicking game, you could really determine an outcome if you did it well. And one of those things that came to the fore was drop goals, because out of nowhere you can just score 3 points. Yeah. And it was my way of being like, look, when I was young, I liked to try and run around people and throw the ball here and do this and do that and score tries. But now I'm finding at this level, I can just score points willy-nilly. I can score points as I wish, and that can change games. So you start to think my way of really impacting the game is just to do that. Because it did hurt teams, but also the more you do it, the more you can't lose touch with that threat that you pose when you're on your game. And I worry about that for guys, because it's difficult, because the media are onto them every game. They're not quite there. It's more and more of this, and you can see the danger is, I need to go and think about it. I need to go and work it out. You're like, no, don't. Just go deeper into the feel of it. Just understand there's some stuff that you want, and now send it into the field and let it work itself out. The more you become a thinker, the deeper you get away from the action.
It's great you talk about that balance of a 10 and in my time with us together, you really coming from a real run first, run second, run third, background that I had a great appreciation of the ability that a kicking game can have. I only learned that really and respected that when we were together in Toulon. And coming back to New Zealand, and you realise when I did come back, it's a skill that's wasn't at the time, promoted, because we're running. Everything's about running. Whereas now it is very much that balanced balanced playing style. And then it goes too far when a running 10, as you've said, has all the skills, is a great touch player, and he's renowned for his running. Now we want him to kick more. So that's all he focuses on. Yeah. And he's not a threat. And he stands deep in the pocket. He doesn't, challenge the D line or have a run, so they don't have to worry about him. And so they focus 3 numbers on, your big ball running forwards or backs. So
I think, do you know what? There's a huge part of this, which I mentioned before about growing up with certain, with a strong relationship with fear, and it's still one that's sort of prominent in my world today, which is a good challenge for me. But what that basically boils down to is a lack of trust, and that's a huge part of what you're talking about. Is that you have to have enormous trust in the coach and the game plan, and you have to have enormous trust in the players around you, your teammates. But that's a two-way street, because if you never give them the opportunity to do what they can do, you're never going to trust them. And if you only ever let them do it once, and if it doesn't go well, you say, well, that's it, and what have you. And I think, so it's a two-way street. It's not just they've got to prove themselves. You've got to give them the ball. And I had that trust when I was younger. And what happened was, with England around the 2001-2 sort of area, and 3, I guess, when it was just starting to maybe come to its end, what was happening was that we were a massive running team, but we were bleeding in some kicking game stuff. And a lot of that was happening just coaching myself. So the game plan was huge trust in being able to run the ball from anywhere, and we did, and we had this. And Newcastle, we ran it everywhere. And the same thing, the coach would meet with me and just be like, just at times, have a look at this. Whereas when you got towards, like you said, the France thing with England a bit later on, is that when you start to do more of it and they kind of see it as an option, or maybe they buy into it too much more, you take more away from the running game, and they load more on the kicking game. And what that does as a player is you start to, because there isn't the same ambition or desire, or even sort of freedom to do it. As with it in France, maybe it's kind of like, look, if you're in your own 40, you kick, that's it. Kind of like, well, I'm certainly not going to give the ball, because basically no one's expecting it. Yeah. So then you say, well, hold on, I've got a kick. And then you start, people then say, oh, well, hold on, that's what he does. Let's build the game around that. Whereas what I had at Newcastle was that the way we trained was fast, and we ran every time. So they saw that and said, let's build the game around that. But when I got to France, people had their idea of what I could do and built a game plan around it according to that. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to kick. I wanted to rediscover myself. I wanted to run, but what it did was that we kicked more, and it went well. And so it just, you almost put yourself into that area. And then suddenly when you don't do it, it goes wrong, and you realize that you're almost locked in. And I think having that trust means that you have a game plan where you can score from anywhere. You've got to go for that. And then you also have a really strong idea that at any time you can also drop goal. And in order to do that as a player, you've got to be incredibly able to keep opening up and then focusing in and opening back up. Because when you focus in and you stay focused in, you miss. But if you focus in and you open back up, go in, and coaches have got to be able to do that as well. Because if you find yourself focusing in on a big win that goes well, and you kick the ball a bit, and suddenly 10 games down the line, it's all you're doing. But you've got to, in your training, you've got to come back to the running the game. And I think for me, that trust was a big thing. And I didn't give enough people a chance to show me, until they came in with a massive name. And then I'll just be like, right, well, I'll trust you because I've seen you do it. Like, Matt Gitter or Sonny Bill or yourself. You kind of go, right. But Felipe Gonzalez or whatever. But largely, you've got to, when I was 18, if no one had trusted me, I wouldn't have got a shot. And so, for me, there's a big exercise in trust. And And I was probably late getting to the party on that, because by that time I was big into controlling outcomes, and I knew I could from a degree, because I could use both feet, and I could kick the ball everywhere, and I could sort of drop goals as well. But what it meant was defenses got more switched onto it, and it became harder to do it. And then we got more of those sticky losses, and we ended up scraping through to some stuff that we probably could have, like New Zealand, had a few 40 pointers in there rather than 12-9 sort of thing.
Sorry, Jonny, can you just put
out your...
Yeah, just so you can, it was just a bit of rubbing on there. It's all good. I've learned to edit a bit better now, so hopefully I'll be able to. It's one of these new skills I've picked up.
Hey, good for you.
Oh, look, it's all a bit of a learning curve, eh? Look, now we're gonna just go into a bit of the business side. So now you've started Number One Kombucha. You've had a few businesses, since you retired, and I just want to talk around the importance and of a life outside of rugby, and but what got you into business? Is it something that you started before you finished playing?
I did start it before I finished playing. I started a couple of businesses. One was in clothing, the other one was in food, and I started the clothing one about 2010. The food one was about 2011, 2012. And it was just things that were being inspired from, what I was kind of seeing, especially the food business, which was just...
sorry to stop you, Jonny. I think it's just, it's just, it's a bit...
Let me see if I can move it around.
Yeah, it was a bit muffled. It's just started to be a bit more muffled.
Hear me now? Is that still...
I can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that seems better.
Yeah. Do you want me to start again?
Yeah, please, if that's all right.
So I did start those businesses when I was still playing. 2010, I got a bit more into sort of ventured into the clothing side, just because I saw an opportunity that from a personal side, it was a bit of a vocational thing that I was really interested in. But more importantly, the food one that I started around 2011, 2012, where I was kind of starting to have a question over my health. I was really aware that I was very fit, but I didn't feel at all healthy. And the more I went into change rooms, everything was looking so scientific. And I just felt like I felt like I was moving further and further away from nature and from the importance of it. I didn't know quite what was at the base of that or what was further down than that, but I just kept following it, and eventually came to a point where I tried out a few things that didn't really work, and then came upon the kombucha thing. My wife trained to be a nutritionist, and me going deeper and deeper into mental health, we sort of came upon fermented foods and living diet, probiotics and all these kind of things and bacteria for connecting sort of the body as a whole sort of more coherently. And what kind of it came down to for me was just understanding that, as we were talking about getting lost in your identity of what you do and moving away from what you are, and what we are is on a different dimension to the body, but is essentially kind of experiencing life through the body, and that body is made up of soil. Everything comes from soil. Soil grows the food and whatever. And here was the last time last time I thought about eating something fresh from the ground. I never it wasn't remotely interesting to me. I was just eating whatever and thinking of it as how much protein's in it, how much this, but stop thinking about how fresh it is, how it's grown, and connecting to it on a level that this is going to be my body. Like we do things like this, sort of like these kind of, we run a few programs, but it's the other business I have, or it's actually a foundation, is in sort of holistic health. And one of the things we sort of look at is that, maybe every 7-10 years, your cells regenerate and regrow. Essentially they grow brand new. So you just become a new body, and they only grow out of what you eat. So what you are is what you've eaten. And it's not surprising that if you start eating things which maybe don't look at all like the earth, don't look at all like what they started, that suddenly, yeah, if your eyes are made out of it, if your brain's made out of it, if your bones are made out of it, your joints made out of it, it's like, well, maybe you aren't going to feel quite as good as you could. And you've got to find what works for you and everything. And so for me, I got into that. It was my passion. And I saw an opportunity. But in terms of that was on the level of information. So I was gathering information, I was looking at it, I was doing all this, and it was really exciting, almost like putting together equations, what can be done, who's going to work, who can work together, what can make it happen. But the bit you're talking about, becoming what you're going to do after rugby and identity-wise, I'm the same thing. This is the interesting thing, is that I've just swapped a rugby shirt for a different shirt. I'm still underneath it. I'm still seeking a goal. I'm working with really exciting people around me, and I'm challenging myself daily. It's kind of like, well, what was I doing when I was playing rugby? The same thing. But when you are able to take the shirt off, you can put a brand new one on, and it feels exactly the same. And I mean, not the same in terms of monotone, but it's the same beautiful journey. It's just what we were talking about before, is when that shirt comes off, you go with it. Then you're like, oh, you put a new, or the other way of talking about it is that you can't take that shirt off. And so you put the new shirt on over the top of the rugby shirt, and it just feels a bit like, it's not the same. It's not me. It's diluted. You know, like all that energy's gone into the rugby shirt, and I can't have that. And now it's going into this shirt, and it just feels a bit like, oh well, better get on with it. And whereas actually, if you remove the rugby shirt, you put any shirt on, it feels phenomenal. Whatever you're doing, because it's the same thing. You're seeking your potential through some kind of vehicle, and the vehicle is rugby, and now it's this. But the danger is like I said, so when I mentioned the holistic health, it's all about taking that shirt off, realizing that, what you do and all those things and what you think and feel, it's not who you are. It's actually, it's a way of experiencing life, and you've got to reconnect to you, which is you can't touch you. It's infinite. When you reconnect with that, you can wear as many shirts as you like, and whatever you're doing, there's passion, there's joy, there's excitement. But taking off that shirt, as we were mentioning before, means becoming brand new, which means, for me, the big change in me is realizing a little bit that I don't talk anymore about having a past. I talk about having memory. I don't talk about having a future. I talk about having imagination, which leaves me in the now. And when you remove the conclusions I had about how I got here and my past and who I am, that memory becomes really exciting. You can do whatever you want with it. But when you believe that this is who I am, your memory is fixed for you. And when it gets fixed, it starts to control your imagination. You start thinking the same stuff. You're always thinking about, what if this happens, and what if that happens, or, oh, if only I should have done that. But when you free up that memory by letting go of the past, you then free up your imagination, and every day becomes an opportunity. And I think that's been the big change. So business after rugby is kind of like, well, what do you mean after rugby? This is my business. I'm in my rugby shirt now talking to you. I mean, you might be able to sense I'm the same intensity. I'm not letting it fully rip, but I'm intense, because why not? Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, but you're 42 years old. I'm not 42 years old. It's a backstory. It's another story. Leave it. What am I? I'm just here and now, and I've got memory, and I've got surprise imagination. I'm inspired about what I'm going to do, and I've got a goal. And it's like, yeah, there you go. There's a nice starting point to already starting towards health. But some of the learnings through rugby are very much built upon, depending upon your past, your big wins, and this is what makes you who you are, and this is why you're going to win tomorrow. It's kind of like, no, you're going to be great today and tomorrow just because you're you, and you don't have to earn that or be defined by anything for it.
It's a great viewpoint too, because I've talked to a lot of our guests around those transferable skills from rugby into business. What you're saying is they're all transferable, because that's who I am. That's, those are the memories I've created.
Yeah, definitely. There's no. It's work. People talk about work-life balance, life after rugby, you're kind of like, life's life. There's no such thing as work. You know, what am I doing when I'm working? Like, what are we doing? Are we working? What am I doing? I'm like I said, I'm an energy form. I've got you. We're transferring. I feel like I'm being served. I feel like I'm exploring. Right. Well, when does it become work? Like, what if we're both getting paid? You know, it's kind of like, oh, is it now work? No, it's still the same thing. It doesn't matter if you meet someone that, you know, crosses your path and it's someone you've never met before. You're kind of like, it doesn't matter whether if they're wearing a suit and it's in your office, is that work? It's like, it doesn't matter. All skills are transferable. And if you like, in terms of transferable from rugby, the perfect life coach is always the on the field during a match rugby version of you. For me, that's what it is. I look at, if I say, right, who am I going to listen to? If they've got any advice for me, I'm going to go to that version of me that's in the moment and is doing incredible things. I'll be like, right, you teach me. What I'm not going to listen to is the me in the changing room who thinks he's taking credit for it with all his suffering. So I'm going to say, right, I'm only going to ask the on the field player. I'm going to be like, right, what are you thinking when you're doing it? Nothing. Right, I'm not going to think about anything. And does it feel like, are you worried about what's going to happen next? No. Right, okay, that's a good learning. Okay, and how do you feel? I feel effortless. Good, okay. So I'm going to work towards feeling effortless. I'm not even work, I'm just going to allow effortlessness. And what about everyone around you? What are you thinking about them? Well, nothing. They're all fine. They're all just the same as me. Yeah, that's it. Whereas you go to the change room version, it's like, oh, well, what am I looking at these people? Well, that person there, I'm not sure if they're ready today. And that person there, they're not good enough to be here. And you're like, look, there's a brilliant teacher in you, and it's you at your best. And if you ask them direct experience, they've got great messages. And most of them, or all of them, will be, stop doing what you're already doing and just let go. And for me, you know, that trust is a massive challenge, to trust in it. But I've never trusted and regretted it at all. You know, I find, you know, that's the joy. So when you say about, am I going to be successful with what I'm doing, I'm kind of like, is that question really going to matter to me when I'm 95? That I've been a success, will that matter? No. What's going to matter? Have I had a good life? Well, it's kind of like, well, what's the answer to that? What's the answer to, have I had a good life, or am I having a good life, is simply, am I living this moment fully? That's it. And that's why I say the teacher of you on the field, or me on the field, is the best coach. Because you look and you say, are you living this moment fully? You're kind of like, oh yeah, there's nothing I'm lacking. And so I bring myself back to that same thing. And that's the most beautiful transferable skill from sport, is that in the zone, you get an incredible insight, albeit very brief. And that's the one I've got to listen to.
And, you know, with, like you say, it's just so you're so passionate about, you know, when you talk, you can hear that coming through, J-Dub. And, you know, when I'm thinking about it myself, you're right. You know, because I try and formulate my whole day, or, you know, with my business, my life, around what I know, which is rugby. So how do I try and get into that again? You know, how do I compact that into my day? How do I schedule my day around what I do? And because I need to have a routine, because that's what I've been doing for 40 years. Yeah. You know, and you know, I was just listening to you there. You're right. That's my life, but that's because that's just my life. That's what I'm used to, and you know, it's kind of worked for me. So why wouldn't you replicate that, eh?
Definitely. I think the thing is, for asking, has it worked for you, though, is a deeper question. It's being kind of like, you know, has it worked for me is, you know, I did hear someone else say this, it's really, really sort of interesting when you say that for the experience of life is internal. And when your energies of mental, physical and emotional, and you just your sheer energy are peaking, you're in that space of sort of compassion, of love, of bliss, of energy, of whatever it be. But when it comes to success, you need stuff on the outside to line up for you.
Mm.
And so when you ask, has my life been successful? It's kind of like, it's an interesting question, because to have everything line up for you on the outside, but to not have the inside is a really big one for me, because I can look back and a lot of people will tell me, oh, you had such a successful career. I'm like, you're kidding me. I suffered the hell out of it. What the hell is successful about that?
Mm.
I think you're dead right though, is that question of, for me, is almost like there's so much informational stuff that's so useful. You know, like if I'm going to do something, it's kind of like, well, I can learn about how to use technology, like you're saying, or I can learn about my business and all the things that I can learn this stuff, and it's brilliant. And it can help me also to learn about things in the past that, you know, like this journey took me this long, so I'll leave at this time before, you know, to give myself enough time to get there. I've been this sort of place before, so I'll need to pack my bag with this kind of stuff. It's loads of great organizational stuff. But in terms of me, I've got to let that be absolutely free. And I guess that's the brilliant thing about this is, for me, is that I approach this so differently. You know, we're doing this podcast and, you know, it's kind of like, I'm not interested in what we're going to talk about. I'm like, let's do it when we do it. Mm. And if I haven't got it, I'm like, I'm going to love finding out I haven't got it. I'm going to love it. If I sat here going, oh, well, maybe at the end of it, I'll be like, wow, what an experience. But I just trust. I have trust that it's going to be there. And then by doing that, this is going to go a certain way, and it's going to be so powerful. Whereas for me, in the change room before a game, I couldn't have that. Mm. I was in survival mode. And my preparation was survival. And because it was survival, I'm not open to any new learning or evolving in any way. And it's such a powerful thing to say, as if you're in even, you know, that slight fear of trying to get through stuff to get to something else and get through it is survival. And if you're in survival, you stop evolving. And it's like, so if you survive most of your life, you just stop learning or evolving. So for me, towards the end of the career, I was like, this has to stop. It has to stop, because if I'm going to be on this planet for hopefully lots and lots of years, I've got to go somewhere. Mm. And I don't mean physically, you know, I've been a long way around the world. I've been to your place down there and stuff. So I've traveled most of it, but I've got to go somewhere new. Mm. If I want to be a leader in any way, I've got to go somewhere new. If I want to hit my potential, I've got to go somewhere new. And if I want to connect to others, I've got to let go of all my conditions so I can do it fully. And when you look at that, there's not that much time. So, you know, I think that for me has been a game breaker, and I have to question myself to be like, look, am I controlling this or am I exploring it? Mm. And I'm like, people say life's too short. It's right. And the problem is when you're really doing it well, it flies by.
It just reminds me of the quote, rather than survive, you want to thrive, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, you want to live life, not just get through day by day.
Yeah.
Hey, J-Dub, I'm conscious of the time, and you know, you're on holiday, and I appreciate your time. So I just want to say just a massive thank you for giving up your insights. And you know, we haven't caught up in a while, but your passion for what you do and the life you're living is huge in it. You know, you gave me a lot of great insights into, you know, what I'm going into, and some things that I suppose gives me confidence to, you know, explore this next part of my life and where I'm going. So give our love to Shelley and the little one, and enjoy your time.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. I always trusted you rugby wise, and I have huge trust that whatever you do, you're going to do it beautifully, mate, and it's going to be right.
Appreciate it, brother. You take care, eh?
And you go on, man. Thanks again.
Thank you, John. Thank you.